He stole my identity to get our inheritance, so I became someone else entirely to get it back. That's not a metaphor. My older brother literally forged my signature, presented a fake ID, and drained the trust fund our grandfather left for both of us. And everyone, our mother, the lawyers, the damn bank, believed it. He looked enough like me. Always had. In family photos, people used to joke that we were twins born 2 years apart. Same eyes, same nose, same dimples when we smiled. But that was where the similarities ended. He was the charming one, the golden boy. I was the quieter one, the one who kept his head down, who followed rules, who didn't stir up trouble. And maybe that's why he always got away with things. Even now, I can still remember the day the letter came. Cream envelope, gold lettering. A final disbursement from my grandfather's estate. $740,000, half of the remaining trust. The other half already sent to my brother 2 months prior. Only problem? I never received my half. I called the firm handling the estate. Got transferred 3 times before someone finally checked the file. "Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice tightening, "you already claimed your portion. In person, actually. 2 months ago." "No," I said. "I didn't." She hesitated. "Well, someone did. With ID. With your name. And they signed off on it. We have the documents scanned." I felt my stomach drop. "Can you send them to me?" She said she'd have to check with her supervisor. That night, I sat in the dark with a whiskey in one hand and a family photo in the other. There he was, Mark, grinning like a game show host. My older brother. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year, not since our mother's birthday party. The last time I saw him, he was drunk and calling me a spineless coward in front of our cousins. Said I was pathetic for being single at 33, for still working the same job since college. He'd started some sketchy crypto project after the pandemic. Made a killing, then lost most of it, then somehow landed on his feet again. Mark always did. No matter what damage he caused, people just forgave him. Or forgot. I didn't. And I wouldn't. The next morning, I had the documents in my inbox. Passport copy. Signature sheet. Release form. And there it was, my name, in ink, scribbled like a child trying to forge a permission slip. He didn't even bother to get the signature right. But it was enough. Enough to convince the bank. Enough to fool the estate lawyers. Enough to rob me of nearly $750,000. I called Mark. Straight to voicemail. I emailed. No reply. I messaged our mom. She said she didn't want to be caught in the middle. Middle of what? Theft? Fraud? Family betrayal? That's when it hit me. They weren't surprised. Not really. Maybe they didn't know, but they weren't shocked either. Because deep down, everyone expected Mark to win. And me to roll over. But not this time. That afternoon, I made 2 calls. First, to a friend I knew from college who worked cybersecurity for a private firm. Second, to a guy I met at a poker game once who did off-the-books consulting for people in trouble. I wasn't even sure what I was doing yet. But I knew this much. If Mark wanted to pretend to be me, I was going to become someone he wouldn't see coming. And I was going to take back what he stole, dollar by dollar, lie by lie. Let the game begin. I started by studying him. Not just like a brother, like a Mark. Every public photo, every article he'd been tagged in, every LinkedIn update. I went deep. Mark had no idea how much of his life was online. He was always loud, always public. Private jets, champagne brunches, crypto retreats in Tulum, all curated for likes. But the real gold was in the details. Tag histories, business filings, old bios he never deleted. One podcast appearance where he bragged. Yes, bragged. About how easy it was to set up shell companies using just a P.O. box and a prepaid debit card. He called it legal invisibility. Said you could do it in 30 minutes flat. I wasn't planning on hiding. I was planning on exposing. But first, I needed access. The kind you don't get by knocking on the front door. So I called Jeremy, the friend from college. Cybersecurity guy. Bit of a recluse now, paranoid as hell, but a genius. The kind of guy who treats burner phones like napkins. "Mark Daniels?" Jeremy asked, chewing into the phone. "Your brother?" "Yeah," I said. "He stole my identity. I want to steal it back." Long pause. Then, "Send me everything you have." I did. 47 emails. PDFs, screenshots, even a voice memo from our mom that half sounded like an apology, half like a shrug. Jeremy called back the next day. "He's sloppy," he said. "Like, braggy sloppy. You're lucky." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I found the servers he uses for his crypto platform. and one of them still has FTP open. That's like leaving your diary on a bus bench. You can get in? I'm already in. He sent me a file. Password protected. Inside were PDFs of investor decks, offshore wiring instructions, and something called Project Lazarus. What the hell is Project Lazarus? I asked. Jeremy chuckled. Looks like a dummy token scheme. Pump and dump. Maybe even a double dip scam. He's got wallets tied to burner wallets, tied to exchanges, all under pseudonyms, but they all route back to one IP address. Let me guess, I said. Our childhood address? Bingo. And that's when it clicked. Mark wasn't just stealing from me. He was laundering the inheritance money through his failing startup, using it to create fake liquidity. On paper, it looked like he was pumping life into the company. In reality, he was just recycling trust fund money and investor cash like a snake eating its tail. So I made a move. I filed a quiet complaint with the SEC. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. Just a tip, anonymous, with all the documentation Jeremy provided. I didn't want to scare him. I wanted him distracted. While he dealt with that, I went to Vegas. Because that's where David lives. David's the guy I met at that poker game. Ex-private investigator. Got booted from his license for tapping a judge's car once, but still sharp as hell. Knows how to follow people without being seen. How to make things happen off the books. He looked at the printout I brought him. Mark, grinning in a suit that probably cost more than my car. This the bastard? David asked. That's him. You want dirt, leverage, or exposure? All three. He nodded, cracked his neck, and said, give me 4 weeks. While David tracked him physically and Jeremy tracked him digitally, I focused on building the one thing Mark never had, trust. With the right people, the right victims, the investors. I started contacting them one by one, posing as a concerned family member. A few hung up. A couple told me to get lost. But one man, Philip Granger, a retired hedge fund partner, agreed to meet me. He invited me to a golf club he frequented. I showed up in the cheapest collared shirt I owned and told him the truth. No spin, no pitch, just what my brother had done, how he forged my identity, how the money trail looked, how Project Lazarus wasn't a phoenix, it was a fraud. When I finished, Philip sat there for a long time, just tapping his glass. You know, he said, your brother promised me a 20x return. I believe it. And I gave him $250,000. I winced. Then he smiled. But I always knew he was a bullshitter. I just wanted to see how long he could keep the act going. So you're not mad? Oh, I'm furious, Philip said. But I'm also intrigued. So here's my question, son. If I help you, what's your endgame? I looked him dead in the eye and said, I want to burn his kingdom to the ground. And when he crawls from the ashes, I want him to know it was me. Philip smiled wider. Now that's an answer. And just like that, I had my first ally. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was chess. And I had just taken a bishop off the board. David came back with footage. Not grainy street cam stuff, real surveillance. Hidden GoPro footage, cell phone captures, and a body mic that caught audio clean enough to send to a podcast. He got it all. Mark in his rented office, Mark lying to investors, Mark giving contradictory statements about asset growth. He even recorded one brutal exchange where Mark told a potential investor, an older woman, mid-60s, that she could expect a guaranteed double in under 6 months. Guaranteed. I thought you said this was a high-risk investment, she asked. Mark smiled. That's just what we put in the paperwork to cover liability. I watched that video on loop for an hour, then sent it to Jeremy. Holy hell, he texted. This is smoking gun level. Jeremy was right. But it wasn't just about catching Mark. Not anymore. It was about turning the mirror. See, the truth is, for most of my life, I let Mark win. Let him belittle me. Let him rewrite our family's story, so he came out the hero, the clever one, the rebel, the genius who didn't play by the rules. And I was just the extra. But something broke when I saw that woman's face. The way she hesitated, then nodded, like she wanted to believe someone, anyone, could give her hope. He sold her a fantasy. And I knew then, this wasn't just theft. This was abuse. So I leaned in. I met again with Philip, the hedge fund guy, and showed him the footage. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he pulled out a little notebook and said, I'm going to make some calls. The next week, we had 4 more people on board. 2 who had already lost money. 1 who was on the verge of signing a deal. And 1, the woman from the footage, who said she wanted to make sure no one else ended up like her. That's when we formed a little group. Unofficial. Quiet. Like a jury gathering evidence before the trial starts. We met at restaurants, video calls, even once in the back of a church. Every meeting, someone would bring something new, emails, voice messages, screenshots. Each piece another nail. Meanwhile, Jeremy kept feeding me back-end intel. Mark had no idea someone was inside his systems. He was still logging in daily, still shifting assets around, still updating his investor reports with projections pulled straight from a fantasy novel. And then, the audit hit. SEC sent a notice. Routine examination, they called it. Mark tried to play it cool, sent out a mass email claiming it was standard regulatory review. But you could hear the panic underneath. David said he skipped 2 investor meetings that week. Then came the first lawsuit, filed by Philip. Publicly, he made sure it landed the same morning the audit was announced. It alleged misrepresentation, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. It also named me as the actual heir of the trust Mark had stolen from. Now the narrative was shifting. Media started sniffing. A couple of local outlets ran blurbs. Crypto newsletter guys started tweeting. I got a call from a podcast host who wanted the exclusive, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Not until I got the last piece. The confession. See, Mark was arrogant. Always had been. And when he panicked, he got careless. So David baited him. Sent an email from a burner account posing as a wealthy VC from Singapore. Said he wanted to invest 7 figures, fast, but needed assurances. A Zoom call was set up. Recorded, obviously. Mark bragged. Lied. Boasted about unreported liquidity and guaranteed exit options. Then David asked him, still in character, and your brother? He won't cause any problems? Mark laughed. Him? No way. I already handled that. Signed it all out in his name. He still thinks he's owed something. Boom. That was it. Admittance. On record. On video. When I played that back, I didn't feel triumph. Not even satisfaction. Just this dull ache in my chest. Like a final, heavy door had shut. Because now I couldn't pretend. Couldn't wish it away. Couldn't lie to myself and say, maybe he didn't mean it. He meant it. He planned it. And he laughed. 3 days later, I sent everything. All of it. To my mother. The videos. The confession. The court filings. I wrote her a single line. This is your son. Hope you're proud. She didn't reply, but I saw she read it. That night, she unfriended me on Facebook. That hurt more than I thought it would. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. I was already in the fire. Might as well drag him in with me. Because the next part was about to go very, very public. Going public was a one-way door. Once I stepped through, there was no undoing it. No more shadows. No more whispered meetings. This was war, and now the whole city would watch. The first story dropped on a mid-size financial blog. Headline, Crypto Wonder Boy accused of fraud by own brother, lawsuit pending. Nothing viral yet, but it stirred the water. 2 days later, a podcast released the Zoom call. The laughter. The fake pitch. The handle my brother line. It caught like wildfire. Reddit lit up. TikToks started stitching the audio. And within 48 hours, the hashtag CryptoCane exploded. Then came the real bomb. A whistleblower from inside Mark's company reached out. Said she couldn't sleep at night after hearing the recording. She sent me, and later the feds, access logs, Slack screenshots, and a spreadsheet titled Convertible Liabilities, Not for Audit. It was damning. Philip sent it to a journalist he trusted. Bigger outlet this time. Headline, exclusive. Internal leaks show crypto CEO laundered family inheritance to inflate valuation. By Friday, Mark was trending on Twitter. Not for a win, not for a product launch. For being a fraud. A fake. A thief. I watched the story snowball from my couch. I didn't eat much. Barely slept. The adrenaline buzzed like an old fridge in my chest. Cold and constant. Then the call started. Investors. Ex-partners. People I hadn't spoken to in years. One by one, they called. Some asked how I pulled it off. Others asked if they should lawyer up. A few just wanted to apologize for ever believing him over me. But the one that broke me came late one night. It was our Aunt Caroline. She'd always been kind to both of us growing up. Neutral, the family Switzerland. But her voice shook on the phone. I saw the videos, she said. Yeah. Is it true? All of it. I didn't have to answer. Your mother, she's not talking to anyone. Keeps saying it's a smear campaign. Keeps defending him. I didn't say anything. But I remember, she whispered. I remember the time he stole your birthday money and blamed you for losing it. I remember how everyone believed him." She paused. I heard her sniffle. I should have said something back then. "I'm sorry." That was the first time I cried. Not out of grief or guilt. Out of recognition. Out of someone finally saying, "I saw it too." 2 weeks later, Mark was served. He tried to play it cool on social media. Said he was the target of a coordinated disinformation campaign. Said his brother was emotionally unstable. But then the subpoenas landed. The forensic audit started. And the panic began. He deleted his Twitter. Locked his Instagram. Closed comments. Pulled his site down. And then, finally, he called me. Blocked number. I almost didn't pick up. "You think you've won?" His voice was shaky. "You just nuked your own family. You did that the second you forged my name. They'll never forgive you." They already didn't. This just gave them a reason. He went quiet. Then, suddenly, venom. "You little coward. You couldn't make $1 on your own, so you tore me down instead. You're pathetic." I almost laughed. "You stole from me. Lied about me. Gaslit everyone around us. And now you want to play the victim? You should have stayed quiet," he hissed. "You should have stayed honest." I hung up, then threw my phone across the room. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like rot, like digging out an infection with bare hands. But the truth was out, and the world wasn't buying his story anymore. The next hearing was in 10 days. Civil court, with criminal filings pending. I didn't know what would happen. But for the first time since that letter arrived, the one about my inheritance, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. And I wasn't giving it back. The courthouse was beige. Not the kind of dramatic backdrop you'd expect for a family war. Just beige walls, cheap tiles, and vending machines that only took quarters. Mark showed up 30 minutes late. He wore a dark gray suit and sunglasses. Inside, his lawyer looked like a catalog model with a Harvard diploma. Mine looked like a middle school vice principal. But she was the sharpest person in the room. The hearing was procedural, just setting dates, confirming discovery requests, and entering initial statements. But Mark made his presence felt. He kept glancing at me like he was trying to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I looked straight ahead and let his little theatrics bounce off. Afterward, as we were leaving, he called out, "Nice show, brother." I turned, slowly. "This isn't a show, Mark. It's a reckoning." He smirked. "You think you're the good guy in this?" "No. I think I'm the one who finally stopped lying." His eyes flashed, but he didn't respond. Just turned and walked off. My lawyer leaned in. "You okay?" I nodded. But I wasn't. Not really. That night, the press had a field day. Crypto CEO faces brother in court over alleged inheritance theft. One outlet used a side-by-side photo of us from 10 years ago. We looked almost identical then. Mark with his arms slung over my shoulder, both of us grinning like idiots. The headline read, "From brothers to rivals, the Daniels divide." I closed the browser. The next day, Jeremy called. We got another hit. What kind? A guy named Andrew. He worked freelance for Mark's company until he got ghosted on payments. Says he's got files, raw ones, with client lists and internal memos that never made it to public systems. Can we trust him? Jeremy paused. I think so. He's bitter, not stupid. I met Andrew at a gas station cafe off the highway. He looked tired. Car full of laundry, laptop bag under his arm. You really gonna take him down? He asked. I already am. He nodded, pulled out a flash drive. This has the investor targeting doc. Names, income levels, psychological notes, even flags for easy sell types. My stomach twisted. He was profiling people? Andrew nodded. It's worse than you think. He called it his sympathy funnel. Said he could spot the lonely ones, the desperate ones. I took the flash drive like it was a live grenade. Back home, I sent it to the attorneys, Jeremy, and Philip. The fallout was instant. One woman emailed me. Thank you. I almost signed. Another. I gave him $90,000. I haven't slept in weeks. Can I help? And just like that, the dam broke. More people came forward. Anonymous tips. Insider leaks. Testimonies from former interns. And in every message, the same theme. He made me feel special. Like I mattered. Mark wasn't just a thief. He was a manipulator. A master of false intimacy. He sold belief, and people bought it because they wanted to. He weaponized hope. And now, the story wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. Victims. Survivors. Witnesses. The court was no longer the only place where judgment would fall. Public opinion had turned. And the ones who once saw him as a visionary now saw the truth. He was never building anything. He was just burning everything he touched. And this time, the fire was coming back for him. The night before the deposition, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, tie in hand, heart pounding like a drum. Not because I was scared, not exactly. It was because I knew the next morning, for the first time in our lives, Mark would have to sit across from me and listen. No more deflections. No smirking crowd to win over. Just him, under oath, with nowhere to run. I barely slept. When I arrived at the firm, the receptionist handed me a visitor badge with trembling fingers. "Good luck," she whispered. She didn't say with what. Inside the conference room, everything was too clean. Glass table, polished wood trim, pitchers of filtered water. A nameplate sat in front of my chair, Ryan Daniels. The one in front of Mark read Mark Daniels, defendant. He didn't look at me when he entered, just sat down, checked his phone, and leaned back like this was a game show panel. But when the court reporter said, "We're recording," and the lawyer opened with "Mr. Daniels, under penalty of perjury," that swagger cracked. First question, did you claim a disbursement under your brother's name? Mark's jaw clenched. I don't recall. They showed him the documents. The forged signature. The fake ID. I mean, I might have been authorized. We discussed options. You discussed stealing? His lawyer jumped in. Objection, argumentative. But it was too late. Mark's temper was showing. "I built that company," he snapped. "If he'd just supported me instead of whining, none of this would be happening." "Mr. Daniels, are you saying your brother's refusal to fund your startup gave you the right to forge legal documents in his name?" Silence. Then the faintest tremble in his hands. When it was my turn, I kept my voice calm. "I didn't come here to gloat," I said. "I came here because I was erased. Because my name was used without consent, and my life was treated like a footnote in his hustle." Mark's face went blank. No reaction. Just stone. But I saw it. That tiny twitch in his eye. That flicker of something beneath the mask. We took a break halfway through. I stepped outside. The sky was overcast, heavy with the smell of rain. That's when someone tapped my shoulder. It was a woman, mid-50s. Quiet eyes. "I saw what you did," she said softly. "My husband invested with your brother. We lost nearly everything." "I'm sorry," I said. She shook her head. "Don't be. You're the first person who's made him answer for it." I didn't know what to say, just nodded, and she walked away. Back inside, Mark tried to deflect blame, claimed bad advice, claimed accounting errors, claimed that maybe I'd consented and forgot. He was unraveling. The lawyer asked one final question. "Do you believe your brother deserved the inheritance?" Mark paused, looked right at me, and said, "No." Simple, cold, final. That was the real truth, wasn't it? It had never been about money. Not for him. It was about pride, about power, about punishing me for the life he couldn't live, steady, boring, honest. When the deposition ended, I walked past him without a word. He muttered something under his breath. I didn't ask him to repeat it. Outside, Jeremy was waiting. "How'd it go?" He said I didn't deserve it. Jeremy blinked. "Wow. Yeah." I exhaled. But at least he finally said it out loud. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off and the city glowing outside. I poured a whiskey, held it up to the window like a silent toast. To truth. To closure. To every quiet kid who finally found his voice. Mark's trial was 3 months away. And this time, he wouldn't be able to lie his way out. 3 weeks before trial, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A letter, handwritten, postmarked from some upscale rehab facility in Northern California. It was from Mark. The envelope was thin. Inside was a single page, blue ink on crisp stationery. His handwriting looked tight, deliberate, like every word was a performance. "Ryan, if you're reading this, then I guess the noise has gotten too loud to ignore. I'm not writing for pity. I know I won't get it. I'm writing because everyone keeps asking what I want. Lawyers, PR people, even Mom. Truth is, I don't know. I never hated you. But I did resent you. You were always the good one. The patient one. The one who got praised for staying quiet while I set things on fire. And deep down, I hated that people still loved me anyway. The inheritance, it wasn't about the money. It was about proving I could take something that was supposed to be yours and make it mine. I thought if I pulled it off, I'd feel powerful. But all it did was show me how empty that kind of power is. Anyway, I know it's too late to fix what I broke. But for whatever it's worth, I see it now. Mark. No apology. No admission. Just that warped confession, framed like therapy homework. I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it once, slid it into my drawer, and didn't look at it again. The next day, Jeremy called. Guess who filed a motion to delay the trial? Rehab defense. Bingo. Claims he's making progress. Wants the court to recognize his steps toward accountability. Will it work? Depends on the judge. But public opinion's still swinging your way. He was right. The press hadn't stopped. Every week, more stories dropped. More people stepped forward. Even a former investor from overseas flew in to give a deposition. Said Mark used his child's medical condition as leverage, promising personalized ROI plans if he signed early. I couldn't make this stuff up. And yet, buried in the chaos, something unexpected started happening. People, strangers, started thanking me. Emails, handwritten notes, even a voicemail from a guy in Idaho who'd lost 20 grand and said, "You made me feel like I wasn't crazy." It shook me, because for so long, that's exactly how I felt. Like maybe I was crazy. Like maybe I'd imagined the betrayal, exaggerated the harm, made too much out of being forgotten. But hearing those voices, reading those messages, reminded me, this wasn't just about money. It never was. It was about being erased and fighting to be seen. I started sleeping better, eating again. I'd go out for long walks just to clear my head, something I hadn't done in years. And every time I passed the courthouse, I'd stop and stare at those cold steps and think, I'm not scared of you anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving Mark. I was standing up to him. And no matter what happened in that courtroom, whether he got jail time, fines, or some deal worked out in a back office, the truth was out. People knew who he really was. And they knew who I was too. Not the extra, not the shadow, just a man with a voice. And finally, a name that meant something again. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, former investors, strangers who'd followed the story online. Even a few familiar faces from high school I hadn't seen in a decade. Everyone wanted to witness the fall, or maybe, just maybe, the reckoning. Mark entered flanked by his lawyers. No sunglasses this time. No swagger. Just a man in a suit too tight at the collar and too late to matter. I didn't look away. He scanned the room, but never met my eyes. Not once. The judge walked in. Everyone stood. Then it began. Opening arguments were a blur. My side laid out the fraud, the forged identity, the siphoning of trust fund money into fake crypto tokens. His side called it an unfortunate misunderstanding within a complex familial dynamic. When the first witness took the stand, Philip, the silence in the room was electric. He detailed the lies, the promises, the meetings that led nowhere, the empty returns. I believed in him, Philip said, and he weaponized that belief. Then came the whistleblower, the investor who'd nearly signed, the retired teacher who'd lost her pension. Each voice added weight, gravity, evidence that Mark hadn't just stolen money, he'd stolen faith, and broken it. When I took the stand, the room felt suddenly too small. My lawyer nodded. Speak your truth. I looked out over the crowd and said the words I never thought I'd say. My brother used to tell me I was weak, that my silence made me invisible. So I stayed quiet. For years. Until I realized, silence doesn't make you invisible. It just makes you easier to erase. I paused. Let it sink in. So today I speak. Not because I want revenge, but because I want the truth to live somewhere besides inside my chest. I want people to know what happened. To me, and to everyone else he deceived. The room stayed still. No coughing. No whispers. Just breath. After I stepped down, Mark's lawyers made one last play. Painted him as misunderstood, a dreamer who got in over his head. But the jury didn't buy it. Deliberation took 2 hours. Guilty on all counts of civil fraud. Restitution ordered. Assets frozen. Criminal proceedings pending. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. Outside, reporters swarmed. I said one line. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. Then I walked past the cameras, past the courthouse steps, past the weight of a name I no longer feared. In the weeks that followed, things changed. I got letters from victims, handshakes from strangers, even job offers from firms impressed by how I handled the case. But the best thing? One morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No name, just a note inside. He erased you. You wrote yourself back. No signature, just a fingerprint pressed in ink. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled without hesitation. Mark's story was over. But mine? Mine had just begun. 6 months later, I visited the house where we grew up. It was empty. Our mom had moved to Arizona, said she needed sun and distance. Mark was still awaiting sentencing, out on bail but stripped of most assets. I'd heard rumors he'd taken up journaling, therapy, some step-by-step recovery program. But I didn't ask, and no one volunteered. The front door creaked the same way it used to. I stepped inside and was hit by that smell. Dust and old carpet, like time frozen in fiberglass. My footsteps echoed through the living room where we once built couch forts. I passed the kitchen with the dent in the fridge from when Mark threw a toaster at it during one of his tantrums. The bedrooms were gutted. Mine still had glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. His had a ripped poster of some 90s rap group, still taped crooked. And then I found the box, tucked deep in the hall closet, behind some old board games and a stack of VHS tapes. It was labeled Ryan. Inside were scraps of paper, photos, and birthday cards I thought had been lost. Letters I wrote to our mom from summer camp. A drawing I made of our house when I was 7. Even a broken watch I used to wear every day in middle school. I sat down in the hallway and sifted through it all, piece by piece. This wasn't just a box. It was a record of who I was. The parts of me that hadn't been erased. The parts someone, somewhere, thought were worth saving. I never found out who packed that box. Maybe Mom, maybe a neighbor, maybe even Mark in a strange, lucid moment. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that it reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor. And more than that, I was a builder. Over the next few months, I helped others rebuild, too. I started a small nonprofit for financial fraud survivors. Nothing huge, just workshops, legal guidance, emotional support. But it grew. Word spread. One woman told me her son finally believed her story after hearing mine. Another man said I'd stopped him from ending his life. And every time I stood in front of a group, I remembered those silent years. The fear, the shame, the way it felt to be voiceless. And I thought, not on my watch. I still had scars. I still had nights where I woke up angry. But I also had purpose. And that made all the difference. One afternoon, I got a letter from the court. Mark's sentencing date, confirmed. And just below that, a request. Victim impact statement. Optional, but encouraged. I didn't hesitate. I opened a blank document. And I began to write. I stood at the podium, the courtroom hushed. It wasn't the same courtroom from before. This one felt older, heavier, like the walls themselves had absorbed decades of confessions and consequences. Mark sat to my right, hands clasped, eyes down. He didn't look at me. Not once. The judge nodded. You may proceed. I unfolded the paper. My voice didn't shake. This isn't just a statement. It's a funeral. For the version of my family I used to believe in. Some murmurs behind me. The judge gave them a look. Silence returned. My brother didn't just steal money. He stole trust. He took the legacy our father left behind, a legacy of hard work, sacrifice, and integrity, and turned it into a weapon. He used my name, my identity, and my silence as tools for his fraud. I paused. Let it breathe. But this isn't about revenge. It's about recovery. Because while he was building castles of lies, I was rebuilding my life, one painful truth at a time. I glanced at Mark. Still no reaction. I used to believe family was unconditional. That no matter how badly we hurt each other, we could always find our way back. But some bridges, when burned, don't lead anywhere anymore. Another pause. I swallowed. So here's what I want the court to know. I don't need him to rot in a cell. I don't need him to apologize. I just need him to stop. Stop taking. Stop lying. Stop pretending the world owes him something. Because the world doesn't owe him. And I'm done paying the bill for his illusions. The judge nodded once, curt and solemn. I stepped down. I didn't look back. The sentence came an hour later. 5 years. Federal prison. With eligibility for parole after 3. Some said it was too light. But me? I felt nothing. Not joy. Not sadness. Just peace. It was over. The next morning, I visited the graveyard where our father was buried. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that lives inside you if you let it. I placed a stone on the headstone, the way our family used to. Not flowers. Stones. Like saying I was here. I kept my name. I whispered. I kept it safe. Wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere far away, a new story was beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was the one writing it.